My name is John, and I've always loved summer. Warm nights, the smell of freshly cut grass, and a sense of freedom. It was a time when I could forget all my problems and just enjoy life. But this summer changed everything. This year, I decided to go to a small town in Maine called Kingsfield. I was invited by my old friend Tom, who lived there with his family. I decided to spend a few weeks with them, enjoying nature and good company. The first few days were great. We went fishing, swam in the lake, and hiked through the woods. But one night, everything changed. We were sitting by the campfire, telling scary stories and laughing when we suddenly heard a strange noise from the woods. Tom tilted his head listening. "Did you hear that?" he asked. "Yeah, what was that?" I replied, feeling a chill down my spine. "I don't know, but let's check it out," Tom said and stood up. We grabbed our flashlights and headed towards the noise. The farther we went into the woods, the stronger the strange smell of decay became. Finally, we saw an old, abandoned house. Its door was open, and strange sounds were coming from inside. "Maybe it's just the wind," I said, trying not to show my fear. "Or maybe not," Tom replied, continuing to move forward. We entered the house, and our flashlights illuminated old, dusty furniture and cobwebs. Suddenly, we heard a quiet cry. It was coming from the basement. We exchanged glances and decided to go further. The basement was even gloomier. The walls were covered with moss, and the floor creaked under our feet. The crying grew louder. Finally, we saw a little girl sitting in the corner, hugging her knees. She lifted her head, and I saw her big, sad eyes. "Who are you?" Tom asked, but the girl didn't answer. She just kept crying. "We won't hurt you," I said, approaching her. Suddenly, the basement door slammed shut behind us with a loud bang, and we were plunged into complete darkness. "What the hell?" Tom shouted, trying to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Our flashlight began to flicker, and I felt a cold breeze sweep through the basement. The girl stopped crying and lifted her head. Her eyes shone with a bright red light, and her mouth stretched into a horrific smile. "You'll never leave here alive," she said, her voice echoing from all directions at once. We rushed to the door, trying to break free, but it was useless. The basement filled with thick fog, and I felt something cold and slimy wrap around my legs. Tom screamed, but his voice quickly faded. I don't know how long we were there. Time seemed endless. When the fog finally cleared, I found myself lying on the floor in the dark. My flashlight was dead, and there was silence all around. Finally, the basement door creaked open, and I saw the light. I slowly got up, feeling every muscle ache, and moved toward the exit. When I stepped out of the house, the sun was already rising. I was alone. Tom was gone. I returned to Tom's house and told his parents what had happened. They called the police, but the search yielded no results. The house was empty, and there were no traces of Tom. The town of Kingsfield remained a nightmare for me. I returned to my hometown, but those events never left my thoughts. Summer will never be the same again. My name is Jonathan, but all my friends call me Johnny. Last summer was the worst of my life. I lived in a small town called Fairview in Wisconsin. Summer was always a time to relax, swim in the lake, and walk until late at night. But that summer, everything went wrong. It was a hot July evening when my friends, Tom and Billy, and I decided to go to the local lake. We often gathered there at sunset to fish or just dip our feet in the water. That evening, we had no idea that our walk would change our lives forever. Willow Lake was always surrounded by legends. The old-timers told stories about a girl who drowned there, and her spirit still wandered the shores seeking justice. We laughed at these stories, not believing a word. But that evening, we were about to learn the truth. We arrived at the lake as the sun was setting. The water was calm, occasionally disturbed by a light breeze. We set up our fishing rods and began waiting for a catch. A few minutes later, Tom noticed something strange. On the other side of the lake, in the thick fog, there seemed to be a silhouette of a person. "Hey, do you see that?" Tom asked, pointing at the silhouette. Billy and I strained our eyes to look into the fog. Indeed, there was someone. The silhouette was slowly moving toward us. My heart began to race, but I tried to stay calm. "Maybe it's just a fisherman," I said, though I didn't believe it myself. The silhouette was approaching. We began to make out details. It was a girl, all in white. Her face was unnaturally pale and her eyes were dark and empty. "She's pointing at us!" Tom exclaimed, panic and fear in his voice. We couldn't move. Cold terror gripped us. The girl slowly started to walk into the water, heading toward us. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, and my breathing became heavy. We all felt her approach, like an ominous cold enveloping our bodies. "Let's get out of here!" I finally shouted, and we all bolted. We ran through the forest without looking back. Our legs tangled in the roots, branches scratched our faces, but we didn't stop. When we finally reached our bikes, I turned to see if the girl was chasing us. She was nowhere to be seen. We returned home in silence, trying to process what had happened. When we reached our street, Tom stopped. "We have to find out who she is," he said. The next day, we decided to go to the library and search for information about Willow Lake. We found an article in the local archives about a girl who drowned in the lake over 100 years ago. Her name was Alice Williams, and she died under mysterious circumstances. We found a photograph of Alice, and my heart fluttered again. It was the same girl we saw on the lake shore. We read that Alice had been in love with a local boy named George, but he betrayed her, and she committed suicide by drowning in the lake. Her body was never found. We realized that her spirit couldn't find peace. Alice was seeking justice, and now we felt responsible for helping her. We decided to find George's descendants and try to restore justice. A few weeks later, we learned that George's descendant, Henry, still lived in Fairview. We went to his house and told him about our encounter with Alice. Henry didn't believe us at first, but when we showed him the photo and told him about the article, he agreed to help. Together, we went to the lake and performed a ritual to appease Alice's spirit. After that, the girl never appeared again, and we felt relieved. That summer changed us forever. We realized that sometimes legends hold a grain of truth, and that even after death, people can seek justice. But most importantly, we learned to value life and friendship even more. My name is Joshua Miller, and I turned 16 this summer. My friends and I decided to spend our vacation in the small town of Sunset Hills. It was the perfect place for a summer getaway, quiet, with picturesque lakes and old houses holding secrets of the past. However, we had no idea that the biggest adventure of our lives awaited us there. The first week went peacefully. We swam in the lake, fished, and made campfires. But one evening, we decided to visit an abandoned farm with a sinister reputation. Locals said a family once lived there but disappeared without a trace, and the house became cursed. "Guys, why don't we go to that farm tonight?" suggested my friend Tom, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "That's not the best idea," replied Jack, our voice of reason. "I've heard there are ghosts there." Curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to go. Armed with flashlights and a few sandwiches, we set off. The night was clear, and the moon shone so brightly that we hardly needed our flashlights. After walking through the woods, we finally saw the old farm. It looked abandoned and eerie, yet it beckoned us. As we approached, the farm's door creaked open by itself. We went inside and were surprised to find everything in order. Furniture was in place, as if someone had just left. Suddenly, we heard footsteps in the attic. We froze, our hearts pounding wildly. "Who's there?" Tom shouted, but there was only silence in response. We decided to go up to the attic. Climbing the creaky stairs, we finally reached the attic door. Jack opened it, and we saw an old suitcase. Suddenly, a shadow emerged from behind it and quickly passed us. We started screaming and ran down. Outside, an old farmer met us. "What are you doing here?" His voice was gruff and ominous. "We just—" Tom began, but the farmer interrupted him. "This place is dangerous. Get out while you can." We didn't wait for a second invitation and ran back to our camp. That night, we couldn't sleep discussing what we had seen. In the morning, we decided to return to the farm to solve the mystery. When we arrived, we found only emptiness. No furniture, no suitcase, no farmer. "What was that?" I asked, but no one could answer. After that incident, we didn't risk visiting abandoned places again. But at the end of the summer, we learned from the locals that a family did live on the farm, disappearing many years ago. They say their souls still seek peace and sometimes appear to warn unwary visitors. The summer night of horror in Sunset Hills will forever remain in our memory. We returned home with new experiences and an understanding that not all mysteries need solving. Some things are better left alone, as they may be more dangerous than they appear.